All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Self. Today, this is the first of four conversations that we're going to be having as part of the Black Men's Emotional Wellness Symposium. I am your host, Courtney Brain. And yeah, if you're here live with us, thank y'all for being here, joining us virtually on Saturday, November 30th, 2024. And yeah, I will have already given an introduction and all of that. So, whenever you're listening, ready. But today we got Dr. Rodrick Stewart. So, Rodrick, I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself however you want to, and then we'll go into the conversation, my man.
Appreciate it. Thanking you for one inviting me to speak on this. I think it's very important. It's the topic itself, and just giving me the opportunity. My name is Rodrick Stewart. I am a board certified family medicine physician practicing just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I am an osteopathic physician, so I'm a DO and not an MD. And as an osteopathic physician, I believe that one of the core tenets is that we believe that the body is a unit capable of self-regulation and self-healing, and its structure and function are integral to proper wellness. So we're looked at as kind of the more holistic doctors, even though there's not a whole lot of difference between MDs and DOs nowadays. But part of that philosophy informs my own practice as a physician. So I'm going to steal some thunder from a few of your other topics today because even though we're going to be talking about fit, I don't believe that a person can be fully fit without addressing their mental wellness, their spiritual wellness, their emotional wellness. So as a physician, whenever people come to see me, they don't realize they're going to get the talks about that because my advice just starts out as diet and exercise. That's it. But everything else we talk about that we're going to talk about today comes into the room with me whenever I go see patients. And as a Black man, intersectionality, other than being a physician, I am a husband, a father, son, someone who has a big interest in sexual wellness. So, in fact, the conference that we met at, the Sex Down South conference, I speak there on a yearly basis. I have experience in BDSM, kink spaces, non-monogamy, polyamorous, so that I can, address my patients and connect with them on more of a deeper level with things. So when I recommend things to them, it's usually because I either have firsthand knowledge or I have experience with people who have firsthand knowledge. I think that's enough. It's a big introduction.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I appreciate I'm always on the like cusp of how people's professional and personal lives intersect because I'm someone who has a lot of my own personal experience out there and it's part of my career. So you sharing uh that you speak from your experience. This is something that is very new or different for me to observe from someone in such a like professional field where there's that power dynamic of, oh my God, like you're a doctor and you're like me. How does that inform your practice to be able to connect with people in these variety of ways, especially when we talk about being someone who's into or has an interest in BDSM, non-monogamy?
It actually helps out tremendously. I remember recently my medical assistant roomed a patient. So she prepared the vitals. She asked the patient what they were here for. And it was basic. She said he came in, he just wants to get basic lab work, and that's it. Nothing's going on. So whenever I walk into the room, I try to connect with patients. I ask them those hard questions. I ask them about, who they're having sex with. Are they, interested in having sex with, the opposite, cisgender? Are they open to, all genders in terms of their sexual expression? And then I also build rapport by just connecting with them. And this same patient who wanted nothing more than labs came to me and told me about how he's 72 years old. He has a friend who is in her 80s, and he's recently been sleeping with a younger woman in her 40s. And he was concerned because he had been having some symptoms that he thought may be related to an STI. He wanted to see if he can get checked. Talking with him, I told him that it's likely that it's more likely your prostate, not an STI, but I'll check you anyway. he, he was really adamant about it being an STI. It wasn't. Like, all his STI labs were negative. And I was able to connect with him and try to convince him that he should get his prostate checked out as opposed to being afraid of what he's doing in secret. And also asked him about his willingness to be ethical with his non. So talking to his what we'll call his main partner about his desire to be with more than one person. And I also tell him that the other patients I have who are non-monogamous, they are, across the board care more about their own health and wellness because of the fact that they have other people who are depending on their health and wellness. So when it relates to sexual health and wellness, if you have multiple people who you are honest with, then you're getting checked regularly. You're telling them, hey, I am sexual with multiple people. You have conversations about whether or not you're using barrier protection, what you're doing about contraceptives. So, in terms of child rearing. So you're having these conversations with people, and it invites a more robust conversation with your physician when you can trust your physician with this information, because there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of different things, but because of how judgmental we are normally in medicine, we don't get to have these important conversations with our patients, that sometimes we only get to see them once a year, and that one conversation that you have with them can be very important, because then, when you trust the person, you can start talking to them about things like PrEP, which is a medication to take to prevent the transmission of HIV. So if their sexual activity is a little bit more high risk, in a non-judgment space, we can talk to them about, are you prepared to protect yourself from XYZ? We talk about PrEP. We talk about DoxyPep, which is a little bit of prevention of other STIs as well too. And it allows us to have more of an honest conversation. So it's, like I said, it's helped me absolutely tremendously, because if I would have just taken the medical assistant's report to me on face value, would have done his basic labs, and then let him leave, we wouldn't have been able to have more of a robust conversation that would help me to advise him better on how he can be well instead of just healthy.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about being able to go deeper into these kinds of conversations, to my understanding, y'all don't really get a lot of time with patients. So, where does that time come from? How do you make the most efficient use out of the time to be able to go that deep into a person's experience?
Right. Thank you for hitting on that because, yeah, few people know that on average we get like 7 to 8 minutes to actually talk to a patient in the room. I am firmly against that as a physician. I don't like practicing that way. It makes me uncomfortable because I like to know my patients as if I know my family members, as if I know my friends. So I've been really resistant to falling into that whole 15-minute visit trap. Since I graduated from residency, I went to Morehouse for residency from 2017 to 2020. And after you graduate residency is when you become an attending, which is a big boy doctor. No one's looking over your shoulder, and you get to make all of your own decisions, make a good, decent, more money. But the important thing is that every medical plan you have is your own, but you're also responsible for a lot more as an attending. Since I became an attending, I have only decided to take jobs where I am. Sorry, Gene, could you mute yourself? But yeah, so as I was saying, I only take jobs that afford me more time to have with my patients. So I prefer to have the first visit be an hour, and then I prefer to have any subsequent visits be a half hour. I may get some pushback on this, but it's something that's more important to me than the bottom line for my organization. So I will take that time. And in doing that, it allows me to really connect with the patients. In fact, I've had some patients come to me specifically because of the time that I take. That's a double-edged sword because they think that I'm going to be able to take an hour with them every visit, and that's not the case. I do have a lot of other patients, and as I start to build my practice, then I'm going to get more busy. But I will take as much time as needed in the medical evaluation regardless of how much time it takes me to get to the next patient. I'll give everybody the same amount of attention, but it may not always be the same amount of time.
Yeah. So now people come to you because there's a thing physically happening wrong with them, right?
Mhm.
But it takes for us to get a lot more information to find out what's happening underneath that. And the theme of this particular symposium, we're looking at the cultures, and I talked to you about us and the physical body, right? Uh, Given the wellness overall of Black men and how you're engaging at that psychological, emotional, personal, sexual, life experience level. I'm wondering, like, what are you seeing more of that is related to any physical activity or physical fitness? If that makes sense as a question. Like, what do you
Yeah,
mostly see?
that makes a lot of sense. A lot. So, as a primary care physician, I'm tasked with prevention of chronic disease and cancer and treatment of chronic disease. So, every conversation that I have about your health will always ultimately boil down to what you're doing to your body actively. So the big three that we treat in primary care are diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. All three of these things are what I call diseases of behavior. And when I say diseases of behavior, it takes 20, 30, 40 years for these things to manifest in your body for some people, and they can all be linked to what you're doing on a daily basis. So we start with diet. The Western diet is high in processed meats, carbohydrates, not a whole lot of vegetable sources or a lot of preservatives on your vegetable sources. We got microplastics everywhere, and these things really affect our health over time. So I get a lot of men, a lot of Black men, when they finally decide to come to the doctor, either their blood sugar is a little high or their cholesterol is much higher than it should be, or they come in because, well, just last week I had somebody fail a physical for his job because his blood pressure was like 190 over 100. And this is where I meet a lot of Black men, is past the point of prevention now to the point of we have to treat things. And you can't ever judge a book by its cover, because even just last month, I like to talk in examples of patients. Just last month, I had a patient who, he's a trainer. Like, he trains other people how to exercise, how to be healthy. He came in for his physical. His blood pressure was, I think it was in the 160s, which is a bit high, 160s over 80s or 90s. And his cholesterol was high too. And I had to have a conversation with him about, and also his another one of his markers was high because of a use of testosterone. So I have to have conversations about, because that's a big one now, is men using testosterone when they shouldn't be using testosterone. These things all affect your health in the long run. So we got the diet, we got the exercise, I can tell him to exercise more because he exercises every day. So we have to have other conversations about what's going on with him. Him is primarily diet, and then there's also genetic components to these things too. Uh, Another guy I just had recently, he has what we call familial hypercholesterolemia, meaning that the genetic gift his parents gave him was a higher risk of a heart attack or a stroke because his cholesterol is through the roof. Regardless of what he does, his body holds on to more cholesterol. And we had to have the conversation of the requirement for him to take medication. I don't like to give medication. I like to give information and then let my patients decide what they're going to do. Are you going to make different choices around food, exercise, mental health, or are we going to go to medication route? I don't like to lead with medication, but for him, I had to lead with medication. So we're approaching all of these different people from the same perspective, is that the first thing you need to do is to make sure that what you're doing to your body is in line with wellness and health. And as Black people, we've learned over the course of decades, one, the wrong ways to eat in terms of with the variety that's on our plate, I get a lot of people telling me that they eat once a day, they eat salad, like that's not a healthy diet. Or they eat a lot of fruits and their diabetes, their sugar is high. I'm like, well, all fruits do contain is water, fiber, and sugar. So if you're substituting all of the other bad food for high sugar content in fruit, then that's also not healthy. Like, yes, they're healthy foods, but that practice itself is not healthy to say that I'm just going to replace everything with fruit. So we have to have these conversations. And a lot of times, um, the men come in situations that if I would have saw them 10 years ago, I would have saw them 15 years ago, we would have been able to prevent this. And the saddest part of my job, in fact, just yesterday I was looking through, like on my day off, I'll review labs, and there was an 84-year-old man who came to see me earlier this week, and I was looking through the chart, and he had a bunch of things that were on imaging, like his pancreas, there was something there, and in his prostate, there was a growth there, but no one really followed up on it. No one evaluated him for these things. So I told him that we need to check his prostate specific antigen, which is a blood test. And lo and behold, it came back really, really high, which to me means prostate cancer unless we find out otherwise. And I've had to diagnose too many older Black men who were my father's age or my grandfather's age with prostate cancer simply because they either did not come to the doctor soon enough or someone was derelict in the treatment of that. And that hurts me the most is when Black men can um, they can make the choice or they can be cared for in a different way, and we just haven't done that.
Man, I'm stuck on the physically fit guy, personal trainer, works out every day,
Mhm.
and a lot of what we're told, especially when we look at this lens of what the being a high value man is, right? You work out, you're physically attractive, physically fit. So this man was even susceptible to high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And I'm even thinking about how Thanksgiving was 2 days ago. The only fruit we had was in the wine and in the pies that we had with more sugar, right? And our plates don't look the way that they don't look balanced. Let me just say that, right? Like I look at this turkey, it's ham, it's stuffing, it maybe has some green beans, right? But um my question in this is how much is physical fitness and exercise going to do for us health wise that will impact the cholesterol, the diabetes, the blood pressure, as well as like our chances of getting prostate cancer?
Right. That is a very one is a complex question, has a complex answer to it, because nothing's cut and dry. We have to first think about the age-old debate of nature versus nurture. How much of this is your genetics? How much of this is what you do? We really don't have a good grasp on genetics because genetic testing itself is still very early on. It's very expensive, and it doesn't really give us the answers we want. But we can look at what goes on in your family and kind of guess what genetics have. When I ask about family history, most people will say, yeah, everybody in my family has diabetes, they have a high blood pressure, they're on cholesterol medicine. Right. Probably everybody in this chat has at least one or two close family members that are on medication or should be on medication. That's one. And then two, we have to also look at, what you're doing in your life. For that guy who's physically fit, who is the poster child of what we would think the high value man is in terms of like what he looks like, his physical fitness, there's probably something more genetic, or in pursuit of that physical fitness, there may be some choices that he made that may not be the healthiest. So, we go back and we talk about the use of testosterone. For some men, that use testosterone to build muscle, to increase their workout capacity, or even some to increase the libido, they don't really look at some of the potential negative aspects of the use of testosterone, and that is increasing the thickness in your blood, which will drive up your blood pressure. It'll increase the risk of a heart attack or a stroke for you. It'll also signal for changes in different ways that you metabolize fat. We don't talk about the fact that it could shrink your testicles too, but that's even just one aspect of it. Some guys, they can work out, eat whatever they want, and look a certain way. And just because you look a certain way doesn't mean that what's going on inside reflects that. So those are the guys that their hemoglobin A1C, or the lab test that we get that tells you how close you are to diabetes or how far you are into diabetes, that may be, when I first see them, around 6.0 or 5.7 or 6.1 or something like that, which tells me that they're in that category where we call pre-diabetes, where if they keep doing what they're doing with their diet, then they'll eventually become diabetic, and we have to have different conversations about their medications. And this is that time when we, have to address these things, because a change in your behavior can reflect as getting, one, not starting medications, and two, preventing all of that stuff. And truth be told, if you're working out 5 days a week, honestly, the biggest predictor of your health is more so in diet as opposed to exercise. Exercise kind of modifies what your diet does. It increases your metabolism for a few days after you exercise. It will mobilize nutrients towards the muscles as opposed to gut to build fat. It does things to modify what's going on in the diet. But if what's in your diet is quote unquote trash, then you're just moving trash around, or you're just burning trash at a higher rate than anything else. I tell people that any goals around weight loss or physique or health are 80, 90%, probably even more than 90% diet, and then exercise is another part of it. And we're not even getting to the mental health aspect of it yet, in terms of stress relief, just presence, sleep, like all these things that will affect your health, they start to cascade.
I like your approach in that it's not go work out and that's the end
Right.
all be all, or go lose weight, right? Now, I do have to ask though, how much of this is weight loss? And I'll use myself as an example here. I
Mhm.
played sports since middle school. I played football through college, and coming out of college, I was eating like I was still playing football. And I realized real quick, like I need help. I needed to talk to somebody about what I was eating, how I was eating, how much I was eating. And from that time up until now, I just turned 36. It's been about 13-ish years. And I'm just now learning how diabetes works, or how insulin and carbohydrates and sugar all like play a role into each other. How much of this is just education, right? It's not really go lose weight, you're obese, you need to exercise. As It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as make we need to watch your weight. I want to ask first, why is weight loss such a predictor? And two, how can we become more educated about our own bodies and what our needs are, so that in making our health better, we're not losing weight for the sake of losing weight by like not eating, foregoing, nutrients and all the things that we do need, because I do understand that we need a balanced diet. There needs to be these vegetables, like even that, like so much of our guidance is vague. It's vague. It's go lose weight, eat your vegetables. For as simple as that is, I know that it's way more complex. And if you can just give us as concise of an answer as you can, what would, I guess, like, what would we be looking at in terms of why doctors say just lose weight? Like, how much of a role is that? And what does that look like? And if I need to go deeper, I can from
Right. What I'm thinking that you're saying, yeah, it's not as simple. It's not a very simple. It's a simple ask to go lose weight, but everything behind it is what we're not getting. That's where we're not getting the education. Is why we're having to lose weight.
Thank you.
And
That is, yes, that is
yeah.
exactly what I'm asking. I appreciate
Right. So that goes into the time that we have. We don't have we don't have enough time in medical school. Like it, I started college at 18. I didn't graduate medical school until, how old was I graduating? I graduated medical school. I think I was 29, I think, when I graduated medical school. So it takes a long time to make a doctor. And in that time, we learned absolutely nothing about nutrition. That's looked at as something that nutritionists and dietitians can learn because we're cramming so much knowledge into the biochemistry, the anatomy, the physiology, the pharmacology, the immunology, all these ologies that we have to learn about how the human body works. We don't really learn about nutrition and how that interplays with our body. But we do know that correlations are when two things act almost together. Like we used to think that roosters crowing brought the sun up. So correlated, when roosters crow, sun will come up. That's a positive correlation. When one thing happens, another thing happens. So we see that the correlation with the average weight of the people in America, as that goes up, chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol also go up. I remember back in middle school, HBO had this series called The Weight of a Nation that they would show in health class that would document like the levels of obesity in the country. And you can see through population, through census data, like every 5 years, like the percentages of the people who are obese in each state went up and up and up. And we're also seeing that those levels of chronic disease going up and up and up as well. But like everything, we can't just point to obesity itself as a causation of chronic disease. We can only point to correlation because correlation does not predict causation. So when things go up together, it does not mean that one causes the other, because we know that roosters don't cause the sun to come up. It's just a relationship that they have. But we see that as obesity goes up, chronic disease goes up. So the recommendation being that we have only a few minutes in the room to discuss these things, and we also don't have the proper training in nutrition, the recommendation across the board is if you focus on losing weight, these things will also come down because there's also correlation with lower weight individuals having less chronic disease. So that's the whole simple: go lose weight, eat vegetables. That's why we're here. But when you start to dig deeper and you see that there's, not all weight loss is good weight loss. We have this, pandemic of people taking this shot for diabetics. Now, mind you, the Ozempic and everything else, these shots are for diabetics. In fact, when people started taking these shots for weight loss, my diabetic patients weren't able to get the medications because so many people were taking them off the shelves for weight loss. And I tell people that if you're going to lose weight this way, it's a shortcut. My recommendation is to make small changes to your behavior, small changes, multiple small changes that will become a big change down the line, because you have to make changes to your behavior permanently. It took you 30 years to get to this point through what you were eating and what you were not doing physically. It took you about 30 years to get to the point where we're talking about you may need to be on medication or you may need to have this procedure done. Losing this weight in a matter of 6 months is not going to help you because your habits got you to this point. So as soon as you stop taking that shot, because no one wants to be on a shot once a week for the rest of their life. Most Black people I see in the room, they don't even want to take medication. So taking something once a week for their entire life, a shot, mind you, is not on their plates. So once you stop that thing that prevents you from eating the foods you want to eat, and you're allowed to eat the foods you want to eat again, then I think the studies say within a year or two, people gain back about 60% of the weight that they would lose off of those medications. And then you have this yo-yo effect, which could produce its own problems. I have people coming in with some weird abdominal pains because they were used to being larger. They had a lot of abdominal fat, which insulated their organs. Then when you lose that abdominal fat, organs shift, and then you're reapplying fat. So you're getting some weird abdominal pains from the loss of weight. Your nerves can be stretched certain ways. Like there are different things that are a little bit unexplainable because we don't have a real diagnosis for them, but they're a result of your body going through those quick physical changes, big and small. So it's a thing that frustrates me in a way, because my goal is to partner with my patients and let them know that you have to change those little tiny things, whether it's snacking, or getting up and going to the gym one extra day a week, going for a little bit run, taking 150 extra steps a day and building upon that. Small things so that you don't burn out, because that's a real thing too. Going really hard, really early, burning out, and feeling like you can't do it. You have to make these things permanent, because the rest of your life is what you're aiming for here. Hope that kind of answered the question a little bit.
It does, and I want to expand and just get like any elaboration that you may have. So, what I've learned, I always heard my grandmother, great grandmother say, "Oh, watch your salt, watch your sugar, watch your salt and sugar," and those were the two things that I watched. And it took for me to educate myself further to understand it's not salt, it's sodium, and it's not sugars, it's carbs that turn into sugar, right? So this stuff's like hidden. And I started to read the nutrition labels looking for those things. And that shit is everywhere. It's in all of the frozen foods. So my incremental steps, and it's a gradual like health change. I got my blood pressure monitor. It ain't right here, but like I've been watching mine because ever since I was 23, I've had high blood pressure. My mom was eating Chinese food since I was in the womb. You know how much
Mhm.
sodium is in soy sauce?
And
And
that's
we
and all that other
dumping
stuff.
it. Yeah. So an incremental step that I would propose to anybody who might be hearing this and wanting to make a lifestyle change would be to first educate and inform yourself incrementally. It would be to eliminate the frozen food. I don't do the frozen food section anymore. Like and it wasn't a hard thing for me because it really made me more creative in just making my own shit. So if I do want something that is sweet, or if I want something that is, flavorful, savory, salty, it's better to cook it yourself because you know what's in it, you know how much of it is in there, and you can track it. And so being able to just track with a food tracker app will tell you how much sodium is in something and how much sugar or how many carbs are in things. And people look at carbs and they're like, carbs are the bad guy, carbs are the bad guy, or fat is the bad guy. It's like, not really. It's all this
Very
shit
simple.
that's underneath there that we just don't know about. So
Mhm.
habits like making more of your own food, avoiding the frozen food section, even eating out. Like it's very difficult to eat out. So I've cut it down to about once a week. Everything else I'll cook. And I've seen my numbers decrease. And I've also seen that like accompanied with weight loss, because it's the lower number that I'm most concerned about, just being high. And so breathing exercises I'm finding, because I've always lifted weights. It's not just lifting weights, but things like breathing, things like changing slightly, how you eat sauce. Sauce has been that's been a hard trying to just make more of my own sauces. But that Chick-fil-A sauce, that A1, all of that, these are things that just don't know to look at. So my input that I'm looking for from you is just, are there any other changes like that maybe don't seem so large that people can begin to dip into to affect their health over?
Right. Oh, very good points you brought up. Like, yeah, we talk about salt. Uh, I, I had a funny conversation with a patient recently, and there was a medication that he had. It's called atorvastatin, lowers your cholesterol, and the generic name is atorvastatin calcium. And he read the name and he thought that the calcium meant that it would increase his calcium. I said, no, atorvastatin lowers your cholesterol. calcium is the salt that it binds to in order to go from your gut into your bloodstream. So it has to be on a charged molecule in order to pass through the membrane. That's the biochemistry of it. So you have to adjust these things chemically in order for them to get into the body. And then he started talking about salt. He's like, I thought I was avoiding that. Like, no, calcium, the salt in general is just the term that we give for negative and positive charged ions coming together and making their own molecule. And then we had to have a talk about what actual salt he had to avoid, which is what you said. Yes, sodium. So sodium chloride is table salt, and that is what we tell people to avoid. And specifically because wherever those charged molecules go, water follows. So if your diet is high in sodium, sodium is a charged a charged ion, and that attracts water. Well, when you increase the volume in a system, you increase the pressure. So you have a lot more water flowing through your veins, so your blood pressure goes up. And that's kind of what is behind a lot of these blood pressure medicines, is to decrease the amount of salts, or mostly sodium and potassium, that your body holds on to, so that you get rid of some of this water and your blood pressure goes down. But yes, you can do this in your diet by reading the food labels. I know we just had a comment that said read the labels. I recommend everybody read labels. Read labels, get accustomed to what's going on in your food, because you'd be very surprised. As you said, when I was an intern, I had gotten up to about 240 pounds. It was the heaviest I'd ever been in my life. So I tried a low carb diet. At that time, you have the Atkins keto diet. So for me, it was a modified keto diet. I was planning to be under 50 grams of carbs a day. Every couple of weeks, I was going to have a cheat day. And let me tell you how hard that is to do living in America, because everything is carbs. And when we say carbs, we talk about the things that break down into glucose, because glucose is the form of carbohydrates that your body uses as energy. But glucose only does one of two things. It either goes to the brain and the muscles for immediate energy, or it goes and it gets stored as fat. It doesn't really do a whole lot of other stuff besides those two. And the average person doesn't really get low blood sugar on the regular. We have enough stores in our muscles to really take us through the day. And then if we run into some issue where we don't have enough glucose to really fuel ourselves, we start to break down the fat that we have on board. So unless you have 0% body fat, you've got a lot of batteries. That's what I call fat. I call it energy batteries. You already have a lot of batteries on board. So any sugar that you take into your body, any carbs, which break down the glucose, most of that will go towards fat. Like just how it's going to be. It's going to go towards fat, and that's going to go towards building up fat. And what you can do around your carbs, aside from just completely lowering them, is you can see, so the different types of carbs. There are those carbs that break down the sugars, which become fat or become energy. Then there's also fiber. So fiber is a different category of carbs. It's in plants. It's in some other food sources that we have. But
Barley and
yes,
beans.
beans. Yeah, lentils, beans, leafy vegetables. Even there are some other sources of insoluble fiber like Metamucil and stuff like that. But the average person, I can guarantee you that the average person who's listening right now does not get enough fiber in their diet every day. We should be aiming for 30 grams of fiber in our diet, which is kind of hard to get for a lot of people. 30 grams of fiber daily is what you should be aiming for. Not only does that increase your gut health by allowing for things to pass through your gut easily and not get stuck, and then increase your risk of cancer, it also prevents you it prevents your blood sugar from spiking up, because the more carbs you take, it balances out the levels of glucose, and it prevents those things from being absorbed into your body as well. So we've seen that people who increase their carb content in their diet decrease their blood sugar overall. And then, so outside of that, we talk about fats, saturated versus unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. So any of those animal fats that jiggle when that's on your plate, butters, things like that, things that you can hold in your hand, while you're walking around the house. Those are saturated fats. Unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. So those are your oils, which of course we also want to make sure we stay away from. Seed oils we have to stay away from because they're a little bit more cancerous. So you want to make sure that the fats you consume are a little bit more unsaturated fats. So your fish oils, your omega-3s, those we consume. Then when you talk about exercise, increasing your cardiovascular exercise, because when you get the heart pumping, you also mobilize fat away from your bloodstream and towards your liver where it's pushed out and it brings it lower. So that's usually what the advice I give to people when we go a little bit deeper into what these things are. Because as you said, it's not just about lose weight and then all of a sudden magic happens. It's about thinking about these things, reading those labels, making the right choices about the foods that we eat, making the right choices about our exercise. Those things play the biggest part. And then you also talked about stress, like that is very important as well. Getting enough sleep, having a spiritual practice, an embodiment practice, I tell people are very important because the world we live in stresses us out on a daily basis. If it's not your job, it's your bills, it's your kids, it's your family members, it's people who you don't know that hate you. It's social media. It's all your notifications keeping you out of your body and somewhere else. You're in the future. You're in the past. You're over here worrying about this thing, and you're not embodied. And when you're not embodied, your body thinks that you are in danger. And when you're in danger, you have higher levels of sympathetic nervous system outflow, which is the automatic nervous system that makes you escape from danger. It's your fight, flight, freeze, appease nervous system. And it gets you mobilized to escape the lion in the jungle that we were evolutionarily trained to escape. But it's not a lion, it's an email. And that email is constant. You're not escaping. Like it's constantly buzzing in your pocket. It's always there. All of your stress is constantly on you and you're not escaping. But those mechanisms that your body have in place to escape danger are always being active because it always thinks you're in danger. And those mechanisms aren't designed to be on all the time because they will make your body do things it's not normally supposed to do. And in exchange, it wears them down quicker. It's like sending your body into overdrive when you're just sitting down on the couch watching TV. So while your body is in overdrive, you're breaking down your muscles, you're breaking down your bones, you're increasing your levels of free floating sugar because your muscles use sugar for a fuel source. So as your stress hormones are elevated, your sugar is just floating around because your body thinks that it needs to be sucked up into the muscle so that you can run. You're not running. You're laying down in bed. You're not sleeping because you're worried about, what's going to happen tomorrow or, what bills you're paying. And over time, 10, 20, 30 years, that breakdown starts to occur in different parts of your body, whether that be your eyesight, your hair, if you're a penis owner, your erections, like these things start to deteriorate. Even your testosterone can start to go down if you're under a lot of stress as well too. Like there's so many different parts of your physical health that are affected by just your mental health, that it starts to be this domino effect that balloons. And that's why it's that 7-8 minutes that we get in the room is just not enough. We have to rely on other professionals to be able to do this whole wraparound care. But of course, all other professionals, they become expensive to have, have a nutritionist, have a spiritual coach, have a therapist, have a trainer, have all these things because of the intersectionality of capitalism and our health. We don't have access to all the things we really should have access to in terms of education. That's what all of us professionals are here for, really, is to educate you. Because I can give you all the medications in the world, but if I don't educate you on why the medications are important, or more importantly, if I don't educate you on what you're doing with your health, right now impacts your health in 10 years or in 20 years, then we kind of fail you as just as a medical field or just in general, because that's what we're here for. You know, we as a doctor, the term doctor actually means teacher. My profession is physician. You know, that's what I got my doctorate in. I'm a physician in medicine, but doctor means teacher. And if I'm not teaching you, if I'm not educating you, then at least to me, I feel like I'm failing.
So as we look at fitness, we're seeing all of these other factors that play a role into what our fitness looks like. It's not just how our body looks, it's how our body functions. And we live
Mhm.
in a world where there is so much need for and pursuit of instant gratification, feeling good, looking good, getting instantaneous results. And we're talking about something that you said takes 20, 30 years of time for us to have developed this momentum. And I always say the more we do a thing, the better we get at it. So if we've been doing this for 20, 30 years, we look up and it's like, hey, we have these conditions. Is there a way for us to, with these small habits, sort of begin to build habits that can reverse diabetes, reverse high cholesterol, reverse high blood pressure? If we're making changes and we do these in a way that gets the will to maybe not stop moving forward immediately, but maybe slow it down and
Mhm.
then maybe get to a pause point where it's starting to reverse itself.
Yeah. One of the another funny story from a patient was someone came in and said like overnight they had this thing change that I kind of figured was because of a chronic disease they had. In fact, it was erectile dysfunction. In fact, we can look at this through the lens of erectile dysfunction because it's such a great microcosm for what happens over the course of a long period of time and what can happen if you make changes. So, guy came in, he couldn't get up anymore. We had a discussion. Where are you? Is your issue with up here because the biggest sexual organ is the brain? Are you having issues with anxiety, or is your sympathetic nervous system overflowing? Because if you don't have your parasympathetic nervous system with it, which is the opposite, the rest and digest nervous system, if that's not active, you're not going to get an erection. Um, but it wasn't that. And then it was like, well, you've been diabetic for a while. Your blood pressure's been high for a while. You're not necessarily treating that. Your cholesterol is definitely high. You think this was overnight because that's when people come in. Because when something happens one day, they think overnight something happened that can just be fixed. But what really happens is that your body compensates for so long. Like your body just gets to the point, it's such an evolutionarily sound machine that it compensates for your own bad choices over the course of years. And then one day you notice what's been happening for a long period of time. So I think it was like what Big Sean said, it took 10 years to become an overnight sensation. It took 10 years for you to have erectile dysfunction overnight. And that's where we start to have this conversation of this is because this is the physical sign that you've noticed where your body has been telling you for a long time that something needs to change. So you can measure this physical sign with what your changes that we're about to make. So when we start lowering your cholesterol, when we lower your blood pressure, when we lower your blood sugar, you will start to notice after several months to maybe a year, you'll start to notice your erections coming back. They're strong, or if they were there and they were just weaker, they're a bit stronger now because of the different decisions that you made. So when you invest in yourself and you make that decision to change your diet, change your stress level, change your exercise, then that's one very obvious physical response you can see over time. Because if you don't believe me because your blood pressure coming down, if you don't believe me because your A1C coming down, your cholesterol coming down, I know you believe me when your erections are changing. Because some of the time, that's the one thing we can get black men to invest in is if this is affecting my erections, then we really need to change it. Because some people are like, oh, my blood pressure is just a little high. It's fine. That's tomorrow me's problem. That's a problem for the future. But an erection is a problem for right now. So we can make those changes necessary. And I've had guys come back in and say, yeah, after I had that scare and I decided to make these changes over time, my erections improved. So don't believe when things come down, but believe when things don't come up. Right. So like these are the things that we can point to say, hey, this is your sign to start making those changes. And when you do make those changes, this is what will happen.
Yeah. And this is really helpful because it's things that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like, we'll
Mhm.
just say that. And people kind of regurgitate shit that they see on t-shirts or makes for a cool slogan, right? Uh just lose weight being something that
Mhm.
we're hearing from health professionals without much background. Carbs are the enemy. Stop, you're fat, so stop eating fat, right? These kinds of things have so much more complexity to them. And
Absolutely.
in looking at this as we deconstruct the high value man, I believe that a man of value is someone who takes care of themselves so that they can be who they are and continue to not just care for themselves, but in caring for themselves, be able to care for others around them just in their presence. So it is very
Absolutely.
important that we go into the fitness realm and deconstruct this whole you got to be this tall, you got to look this way. It's about like what your possessions are. So much of what it is to be a high value man from a fitness perspective, you can look great. You can have the height, you can have the abs, you can have the muscles, but what's that mean if your blood pressure, you're at risk for a heart attack any minute, right?
Right.
Or if you have the conditions that are going to eventually hinder you from being able to be that presence that so many of us need, like the world needs for us to recognize what our own value is outside the context of how we see it in the manosphere, red pill content. So I'm very happy that we were able to look at this beyond here's what a high value man looks like. So a high value man is someone who is what in your humble opinion?
My humble opinion, so a high value man, first and foremost, is one who educates himself on the world around him and the world within him. So I've seen a lot of people linking books in the chat. I know when we had our come together before this, we all, we're talking about the books that we read that got us here. Like, I will always recommend No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. I know that someone linked Atomic Habits, and there are other books because when I meet people, it's the intersectionality of their vulnerability and their health. So I talk to people about books like The Body Keeps the Score, when we talk about how trauma embeds itself into our physical health. And also, I know we're going to talk later about masculinity and the intersectionality of that with Black men. And I always recommend The Will to Change by Bell Hooks in terms of a different perspective on masculinity and how that also endangers us. So, for me, the high value man is someone that first and foremost values education, because as a physician, like, you would think that that is outside of everything. You think I would say, eat your vegetables, take your medicine, but no, educate yourself and use multiple sources. If your education is just on YouTube or is just on the blogs and stuff like that's not it. Read from multiple different authors. Challenge yourself. Challenge your own points of view and expand. Like, the valuable man is not the same person he was 10 years ago. It's not having the same habits he was 10 years ago. And, the rest will follow. Be critical of everything around you, but also educate yourself on who you can trust. The medical profession, very, very deservedly so, has lost a lot of trust in the Black community. I know a lot of people like to look towards the Tuskegee experiments, which were a big Black mark on the medical field in general. Won't go into a lot of detail because everyone can Google that for themselves. But the Tuskegee experiments set medicine back with the Black community a lot, and that's just one aspect. There are lots of other issues where we talk about maternal fetal mortality amongst Black women. The fact that so many trained medical professionals don't believe Black people in terms of their levels of pain when they present to emergency rooms and other office environments. So we don't have the trust in Black people. But educate yourself to where you can find someone in the medical field that you trust, and also educate yourself to be able to link Western medicine to Eastern philosophies and what we call complementary things, because a lot of the people who quote unquote, like for instance, follow, Dr. Sebi or anything else like that, those different philosophies, like yes, there's a lot of good things there too, but there are also some things that may harm you. The same thing with Western medicine. There's no good drug, there's no benign treatment. There are risks and benefits to everything. So being able to bring everything together because of your own education and surrounding yourself with people you trust, professionals that you trust, because we can't all learn anything. I'm not a nutritionist, but I will trust a nutritionist that I do trust. Being able to bring all that together will increase your value. And remembering that, the manosphere, the red pill people, even the people who made up high value. In fact, the man who made up the whole high value man, then he died of a heart attack. So we have to be mindful of what's going on inside our body. So that's the high value man goes to his doctor at least once a year. In fact, makes it his business to only have to go to his doctor once a year. I tell people that my best patients are the ones that take no medication. I see once a year for a physical to do your cancer screenings and your labs. If I have to see you more than that, then we got work to do. So if I'm only seeing you once a year, then you're doing the right thing. And then, just also understanding that when it comes to your health, it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the spiritual, it's embodiment. When I tell people what I recommend they do in terms of wellness, it's find a physical practice that you can maintain and get better at, find a mental practice that you can maintain and get better at, find a spiritual practice you can maintain and get better at. And amongst those three, something that gets you embodied. So whether it's doing Tai Chi or Qigong or something physical, um, working on self help or self improvement, spirituality, whether you're religious or if you practice more of a spiritual aspect, if you believe in the universe as opposed to one God or things like that, making sure that you're investing in that, whether it's meditation, prayer, or something to get you grounded and get you embodied. Sorry, those are the things that I think bring more value, quote unquote, value to a man and makes you more of high value because you're reaching for longevity and you're also in a position to where you can educate others, you can help others improve or better themselves through your own example. So that's what I believe is a high value man.
Right, my man. I appreciate you making the time. I want to leave a space for you to share anything that is pressing for you that you want to say to the Black men who are here, who will watch this, and those who love, support, celebrate, and challenge us.
All right. I appreciate it. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come on and speak. Um, Black man, I love you. I respect you. I want better for us all, and not just in the medical office. By the time you guys come here to me and there's some issues, then there are things we should have talked about, things that should have been done before that. I see you and I hear you when you say that the world does not respect you, the world does not care for you until it's time to make you do something. Masculinity has taught us that we're only useful when we're being used as tools for other people. And I want you to know that you have a tremendous amount of depth as a person that you may not have had access to for so long because the world has lied to you. And this is important not only just for your growth as a person, but your medical, physical body. It'll be important to really tap into who you really are and to expand that. So from a physician, a father, a son, a brother, a friend, someone who loves you from man to man, I say that, just investing in this symposium is a tremendous thing. And even if you're here and you love a Black man, you're going to give this message to him. just let him know that there's always time to make those small changes that we talked about or we are also going to talk about. And there's always an opportunity to get better out there. And there are people here that support you, people here that love you, and there are people here that can guide you if you don't know where you're going at yourself. So that's my words for you guys. Again, I appreciate the time spent here with me, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Thanks, my man. I appreciate you coming on here, sharing your expertise and a little personal experience. We're gonna have to have another conversation. This will be another episode, but we'll get into like some of the sexual health, because
Oh yeah, we didn't even
I'm
get to any
very
of that.
yeah. So we'll get there. But I thought that this was really helpful, especially because of the information that's out there. It's just not specific. And maybe this will help people with beginning to ask the questions: how can I be more involved with my health? What habits can I change? What small steps can I take? And begin to just do their own investigating in that way. So I appreciate you being here, helping us talk about the physical fitness component of what it means to be a high value man. We want us to be educating ourselves, not just on the world around, but also on ourselves. And we don't need to let it be 20, 30 years before our body's accumulating like, hey, hey, hey. And then all of a sudden we look down and something ain't coming up that used to be before we decide to take any action. So go to the doctor. All right. And I appreciate y'all listening in and being here. Stick around, tune in to the next portion of the symposium. That's it. Yeah.